My name is Elza Stefanos. I'm presenting አኒማል ፋቲንግ። አኒማል ፋቲንግ ማለት አኒማሎችን ማወፈር ወይም ማደለብ ማለት ነው። ለምሳሌ በግ፣ በሬ፣ ፍየል የመሳሰሉትን ማወፈር ማለት ነው። ግልጽ እንዲሆንላችሁ ደግሞ ከቪዲዮ በኋላ አብራራላችኋለሁ።
A producer purchases 200 weaned calves, all weighing around 220 kilograms. He places them in his feedlot, feeds them the same ration for 120 days, and at the end discovers that while some animals reached 480 kilograms, others barely touched 400. Same feed, same time, same facilities. The difference in final weight represents thousands of dollars in lost revenue. This scenario plays out on operations everywhere, and it raises the central question every serious cattle producer must eventually face. What actually separates efficient beef cattle fattening systems from those that simply consume resources without delivering proportional results? The answer is not found in a single magic ingredient or a secret supplement. Efficiency in fattening cattle comes from understanding how a handful of interconnected factors work together. When these factors align, animals convert feed into muscle at rates that make economic sense. When they do not, producers find themselves feeding cattle that eat well but gain poorly, or gain well but cost too much to finish. Let me walk you through the 4 core elements that consistently distinguish high-performing fattening operations from average ones. The first factor is animal selection, and this is where many producers lose money before the feeding period even begins. Efficient fattening starts with choosing animals that have the biological capacity to gain weight rapidly and convert feed into muscle rather than excessive fat. This does not mean every producer needs expensive registered genetics. It means understanding that the animals entering your system set the ceiling for what is possible. A calf with poor growth genetics, chronic health issues from its early life, or structural problems that limit feed intake will never perform like a well-grown, healthy animal with favorable genetics for muscling and feed efficiency. You cannot fix poor selection with better nutrition. The nutrition only expresses what the genetics allow. Here is a practical example. 2 calves enter a feedlot at the same weight. One comes from a cow herd where bulls were selected for growth traits, maternal efficiency, and structural soundness. The other comes from an unmanaged herd where any bull that could breed was used. Both calves receive identical feeding programs. After 100 days, the first calf has gained 1.4 kilograms per day. The second has gained 0.9 kilograms per day. The feed cost per kilogram of gain for the second animal is nearly 50% higher. This is not theory. This is what happens on real operations every day. The common mistake here is buying cattle based purely on price per kilogram without evaluating the animals themselves. A cheaper purchase price means nothing if the animal costs more to finish. Experienced producers learn to assess frame size, muscling, health status, and history before committing. They understand that the most expensive cattle are often the ones that looked cheap at the auction. The second factor is nutritional management, specifically how well the feeding program matches the biological needs of the animal at each stage of growth. Cattle do not gain weight in a linear, predictable fashion throughout the entire feeding period. Early in the fattening phase, animals prioritize lean tissue growth. Later, as they approach mature size, they begin depositing more fat. An efficient system recognizes these phases and adjusts nutrient density accordingly. Feeding a high-energy finishing ration to cattle that have just arrived and are still compensating for stress is inefficient and often dangerous. It can trigger acidosis, reduce intake, and set the animal back weeks. Conversely, keeping cattle on a moderate energy growing ration when they are ready to finish means you are paying for days on feed that produce minimal additional gain. The goal is to provide the right nutrients at the right time, matching the ration to the animal's current metabolic state. Consider this example. An operation receives stressed calves weighing 240 kilograms. Instead of pushing them immediately onto a hot ration, they spend the first 3 weeks on high-fiber, moderate-protein receiving diet. Intake stabilizes, health events drop, and the cattle transition smoothly to a higher-energy grower phase. By day 90, these animals outperform a comparison group that was pushed onto concentrate too quickly and experienced a 15% treatment rate for digestive upsets. The common mistake is treating all cattle as if they are at the same stage, or assuming that more energy always means faster gains. The rumen needs time to adapt. The animal's metabolism shifts as it grows. Feeding programs that ignore these realities waste feed dollars and create health problems that further erode efficiency. Another frequent error is neglecting protein. Energy gets most of the attention, but inadequate protein limits muscle synthesis regardless of how much corn or barley you provide. Young, growing cattle have higher protein requirements than finishing cattle, and meeting those requirements is essential for lean gain. The third factor is health management and stress control. Nothing destroys fattening efficiency faster than disease. A single bout of respiratory illness can reduce an animal's lifetime growth potential by 10 to 15%. The metabolic cost of mounting an immune response is enormous. Nutrients that should be building muscle are instead diverted to fighting infection. Appetite drops, days on feed increase, feed conversion worsens. Efficient operations treat health not as a reaction to problems, but as a system designed to prevent them. This starts before cattle arrive. Knowing the source of your animals, their vaccination history, and the stress they experience during transport allows you to anticipate challenges. A proper receiving protocol that includes appropriate vaccinations, parasite control, and low-stress handling sets the foundation for the entire feeding period. Stress is a critical and often underestimated variable. Cattle that are handled roughly, mixed with unfamiliar animals repeatedly, or housed in poorly designed facilities experience chronic stress that suppresses immunity and reduces intake. Even if these animals never show clinical disease, their performance suffers. Here is a simple comparison. 2 groups of cattle from the same source are placed in different pens. One pen is overcrowded with limited bunk space, and cattle must compete aggressively for feed. The other pen has adequate space, sufficient bunk access, and calm handling. After 60 days, the second group shows 8% better average daily gain and 12% better feed conversion. No difference in genetics, no difference in ration. The only variable was stress. The common mistake is underestimating how much environment and management affect animal physiology. Producers often focus entirely on what goes into the feed bunk while ignoring what happens around it. The most perfectly balanced ration in the world cannot compensate for chronic stress or uncontrolled disease pressure. The fourth factor is understanding and managing feed conversion ratio, which ties everything together. Feed conversion ratio represents how many kilograms of feed are required to produce 1 kilogram of live weight gain. In efficient systems, this number might be 5 or 6 to 1. In poorly managed systems, it can exceed 8 or 9 to 1. This single metric reflects the combined impact of genetics, nutrition, health, and management. When conversion is poor, every other expense in the operation is multiplied. You're paying for feed that produces no saleable product. Improving feed conversion requires attention to all the factors already discussed, but it also requires measurement. You cannot manage what you do not measure. Efficient operations track intake, track weights, and calculate conversion regularly. They identify animals that are not performing and make decisions rather than continuing to feed cattle that will never be profitable. There is a practical reality that many producers resist. Not every animal should be fed to a finished weight. Some animals, due to genetics, health history, or other factors, will never convert feed efficiently enough to justify the cost of finishing them. Recognizing this and making timely marketing decisions is part of running an efficient system. Here's an example. A feedlot operator weighs his cattle at day 60 and calculates individual feed conversion for each pen. He discovers that one pen of cattle, purchased cheaply from a sale barn, is converting at 8.2 to 1, while his other pens are at 5.8 to 1. He makes the decision to sell the underperforming cattle as feeders, rather than continuing to feed them. This single decision saves him significant money compared to finishing animals that would have required excessive feed to reach market weight. The common mistake is assuming all cattle will perform similarly if given the same inputs. Biology does not work that way. Variation is inherent, and managing that variation through selection at purchase and culling during the feeding period is essential to overall system efficiency. When you step back and look at these 4 factors together, a clear picture emerges. Efficient beef cattle fattening is not about finding one secret or one shortcut. It is about building a system where the right animals receive the right nutrition, stay healthy, experience minimal stress, and are managed based on actual performance rather than assumptions. The producers who achieve consistent efficiency are not necessarily the ones with the most expensive facilities or the highest-priced genetics. They are the ones who pay attention, measure what matters, and make decisions based on reality rather than hope. Every kilogram of gain that costs less to produce is money that stays in your operation. Over hundreds of animals and multiple production cycles, small improvements in efficiency compound into substantial financial differences. The gap between profitable and unprofitable operations often comes down to these fundamental principles applied consistently over time. If this information helped clarify how to think about efficiency in your fattening operation, consider subscribing to Biggest Bulls and Cows for more practical content on cattle production. Leave a comment below sharing your experiences or any questions you have about improving performance in your system. And if you know another producer who might benefit from this perspective, share the video with them. Building knowledge across the cattle community helps everyone improve.
መጣችን ያመሰግናለሁ።